Hi there, this is James Tripp. This is a video for James Tripp Chaos Wave on YouTube, but I will also be putting it up on the Hypnosis Without Trance blog because it concerns hypnosis. It concerns hypnotic changework, specifically NLP changework, hypnosis changework. This is what we're talking about here. And we're talking about a classic barrier that a lot of people seem to encounter, which is an inability to visualize. An inability to visualize. So I've heard people ask questions about this. I've had some direct questions about this through social media recently. People saying they cannot do NLP processes because they can't visualize, or particular hypnosis processes. I came up recently on the Tripp Level 1 Changework Skills program that I was running up in Edinburgh with my co-trainer Andy MacArthur. It comes up quite a lot, and it's a problem that needn't be. I can't visualize is a problem that need never come up and needn't be. Whether you want to run processes for yourself, self-facilitate changework processes, or whether you want to lead other people through immersion-based changework processes, the problem need not arise. But it so often does. So what the hell's going on? Well, I remember when I first started out doing change work, my approach was pretty much 100% grounded in NLP. NLP taught in a particular way from a particular school. And when I first started out working with clients, I hit this problem all the time. I'd say to a client, you know, just close your eyes and imagine yourself in a cinema looking up at a screen where you can see, and they go, and there'll be a problem, and they would say they could not visualize. They could not imagine looking up and seeing a particular event of their lives frozen on a screen. They couldn't do it because they just weren't good at imagining things. Or I'd ask them to float up above all of the experiences of their lives and look down and see them stretching out in one direction and stretching forward in the other, and they'd say, I can't visualize, I'm no good at visualizing, I don't think I'm doing it right. So this barrier would come up for me a lot. And I remember it actually came up on the NLP training that I originally did. People saying, well, I'm not a very visual person, I can't do the visualization stuff. Well, I don't get that problem anymore. And I mean, I don't get that problem ever. I never ever have a changework client turn around and throw the objection, I cannot visualize, at me, because it isn't a real problem. It isn't a real problem. The problem comes about when people unconsciously set expectations as to what should be involved in visualization, a certain level of visualization, a certain quality. They have a certain, they put unconscious pass-fail criteria in. And when we learn NLP, we often learn to do this. And we ask people, we say, see yourself doing this, or imagine this, or visualize yourself. Never use the word visualize. Never use the word visualize. That's my first tip in this video. So I used to get this problem and I had to solve it. I had to make it go away because frankly, I didn't need it. So I've done this in a few phases. I'm going to tell you the first solution to the problem that I came up with, and this goes back a number of years. There's actually a video out of me doing this, so I'll see if I can dig that up and post a link up in the corner somewhere, linking through to this video. I used to do this little piece with people where I would say, okay, before we do anything around shifting this issue, I'd just like you to close your eyes for a moment and think of an apple. And they would close their eyes and they'd go, uh-huh. And I would say, okay, so you're thinking of that apple. I said, what kind of apple is it? Is it like a green one or a red one, a rosy one? What sort of apple is it? And they say, well, a green apple. And I'd say, okay, so as you're thinking of that green apple, does it have a stalk on top or any leaves or anything like that? And they say it's got a stalk and no leaves. I'd say, and where is that apple? Is it hanging on a tree? Is it in a fruit bowl? And they might say hanging on a tree, or they might say, oh, it's just floating in space, or whatever. And then I'd say, okay, just imagine when I click my fingers, just imagine making that apple twice as big. Uh-huh. Okay, imagine when I click my fingers, it goes back to the regular size. Uh-huh. And then when I click my fingers, move it over to the left. When I click my fingers, move it over to the right. Then put it back, and then open your eyes. So it goes through this innocuous process, and then I'd say, okay, so we know that you can visualize at the end. And now I've just framed what they've done as visualizing. You see, and the thing is, they have just visualized. And I've never had anybody say they couldn't do that process. Why? Because I didn't ask them to close their eyes and picture an apple. I didn't ask them to close their eyes and visualize an apple. I didn't even ask them to close their eyes and imagine an apple. I said, think of an apple. Think of an apple. Now, anyone can think of an apple. Anyone who knows what an apple is can think of an apple, but I'm giving them complete freedom to think of the apple in any way they like. And then when I say, you know, what kind of apple is that? Is that like a green one or a red one or whatever? They're going to give me a description, because anybody can think of any kind of apple and give any kind of visual description of it. The issue is how good they are at witnessing their own unconscious visualization processes. So I'm getting the kind of conscious interference out the way and getting them to connect with their innate unconscious ability to visualize, which everybody has. Everybody must have, or they wouldn't recognize people's faces. They wouldn't know their own front door when they saw it. So everybody has an unconscious ability to work with visual material. But if they make a bunch of conscious rules about how that should be and what they should be able to consciously access, it's at that point that they get in their way. So I used to blow this all out the water with using this think of an apple idea. But I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore. What I do now is I simply invite people to get in touch with something. I just say, bring to mind. Bring to mind. Or I will say, if you were. So for example, I might say to somebody, go ahead and close your eyes for a moment and allow yourself to get in touch with the idea of sitting in a cinema and looking up at a screen and seeing, you know, and I will give space around it. If I want to do that kind of VK dissociation thing, and I'll say, and you can just allow yourself to be with this idea in any way that's right for you now. So I'm using this languaging to soften the boundary of what's expected and give a lot of freedom for how the person can connect with the idea. If I'm doing a timeline visualization, for example, I might take somebody into an eyes closed relaxation process, maybe classic sort of hypnotic looking thing, and then say something along the lines of, you can continue to relax to the point where it's almost as if you could float all the way up above all of the experiences, you know. So I'm saying it's almost as if, I'm not saying you're going to do this, I'm not making a demand that they do it. I'm saying it's almost as if, and then I'm, as a hypnotist would, seeding the suggestions. Their mind is going to flow with what is suggested, providing there's no barriers. If I've made a demand that they experience it in a very specific way, that creates a barrier, often a visualization barrier. So, you know, almost as if you could float up to the point where if you could look down, mind, you might see all of the experiences. You might see all of the experiences. This isn't about demanding that their conscious processing do a particular thing in a particular way. It's about encouraging their mind and their faculties to flow with the suggestions being given. And as long as there aren't some rules in place that say I should or I shouldn't be able to see this in a particular way or whatever, then people will just relax and flow with it. So they keep themselves from engaging with the process by presumed rules about how the process should be. Take those away and the problem goes away. Everybody processes. Everybody can process any suggestion you give in a useful way, providing they don't get confused and think it has to be a particular specific thing that they've decided they cannot do. So that's the trick for getting around the problem of visualization. There are certain things which make it a lot more powerful. You can get people to more visually engage, but I'm not going to cover that right now. I'm going to cover that in a video I'm going to put out next week on Monday on hallucination and how you can increase the likelihood that people will actually hallucinate hypnotically by using language skillfully and artfully. Okay, so if you found this video useful, if you've liked this video, like this video on YouTube. If you're not watching it on YouTube, go to YouTube, like it, hit subscribe, make sure you get your notifications. If you have any questions or comments, there is a comment section below that you can make good use of. And who knows, maybe your question, your comment will spark the next video that gets created here on James Tripp Chaos Wave.